All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is our Whitefish Planning Commission for Vision Whitefish 2045. It is a work session meeting for us to discuss the land use element that came out last Thursday. Hi, guys, we're starting the meeting. Thanks. We'll start with an approval of the January 7th, 2026 minutes.
I move to approve the January 7th minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second? All right, it's been made and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Great, okay. And at this point, we'll take general public comment. So this is anything that you would like to say as a member of the public at this point that's not specific to land use. We'll have a small presentation in a moment from our consulting agency on land use, and then we'll take public comment on that specifically. So if there's anything in general you'd like to say, growth policy, citywide, go ahead and do that now. Please speak clearly. We have one member of our commission that's out of the country, and so he's either joining us through Teams or he is going to watch this later as it's recorded and played back. And so many of you have watched it and know how important it is to stand up, and if you can actually come forward when you speak so that this owl contraption in the middle of the room can pick up what you're saying. This public comment period is very important because we're going to use this period tonight to have our discussion about land use and make decisions on that. So be as clear and concise as you can for the recording. All right, any general public comment tonight? Everybody's here for land use. Yes, John, go ahead.
John Hibberling, 42 Frame Marshway, Whitefish, member of the board of Citizens for a Better Flathead. So this is anything but land use. So I'll talk about housing. I'm going to talk about a couple of suggestions I made which didn't get reviewed. The housing approach in the housing assessment, I totally support that. I support all the trusts and various deed restrictions which create what I'll call real affordable housing. I'm going to talk about relatively affordable housing, which is market approaches. So the first suggestion I made in comments was that on any given project, the city has the power to condition the project, and that a condition should be attached to subdivisions, for example, requiring 20%, say, affordable housing. So I go back to Whitetail Ridge, which we had in 2024, that was 73 million houses, units, and no affordable housing. And that was in part the reason why we voted it down. So I think the city council could attach a condition for 20%. And that would produce about 15 units. Under NLUPA, there's a provision where the zoning administrator can approve, deny, or attach conditions. So this could be one of the conditions. And then if the zoning administrator's decision is appealed to the planning board could do so. And if it's appealed to the city council could do so. So that would provide us incremental bits of affordable housing. I think the developer would at least break even on those units because after all, they're being sold or rented at market rates. And the other suggestion I had was for a lean approach. So we had a project called 7 and 23 Iowa, which is kind of a large barn with very small, maybe 500 square foot, 600 square foot units in it. And the housing assessment says that it's not likely to go ahead because it didn't quite pencil out. So the city could save $1 million in legacy funds and add that to the project, take a lien, and the lien could be a very creative kind of lien. Maybe it expires after 30 years occupancy. And this other provisions could go in there with state inspection. So I ran. It's pretty great.
For $1 million.
4 units.
So those are my two suggestions. Okay.
Going once, going twice. All right.
Hang on one second, I'll quit working.
Oh, yeah, and
So
was Mike able to join us?
I don't see him on here.
We're just gonna wait to see if anyone online has a general public comment. You saying?
No,
People
but
to
they
raise
said
their-
the mic's not working through the else.
No, turn it. We have to. We'll also have our
It takes a minute for it to boot up once it's.
CZB to come in via this whole system in a moment, so we want to make sure that it's working properly. So thanks for giving us a minute, all of you.
For those that can't hear, we're rebooting.
We're good.
Okay, great view of my bald spot there. I'm sure.
It's hereditary.
Great. Right there.
That it's gonna happen, and then when you eat, it does.
All
right.
We're good.
We're up.
All right, anyone online have a general public comment this evening? Raise your hand.
Anybody?
All right, so at this point, we'll close the general public comment portion and move into item D tonight, which is the land use element discussion. And first, we'll have a presentation. We have Thomas from CZB here with us.
Thomas, do you guys want to share your presentation on your end, or do you want me to put it up?
I think it's preferable if you put it up. Sometimes it doesn't let us share in advance, so it might be better if you do it.
Thomas, you seem to be freezing up too on your end, so. I don't
I
know.
might be able to hear you. Let's see.
Your video, you might need to turn off your video or turn it back on.
Let's see.
Okay.
If you can hopefully see that on your screen, Thomas?
I can, yes. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm not jumpy or
So just
staticky.
tell me when to run through and I'll run through it.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay. So thanks
And
again for having us.
if you cut out on us, on the owl, let's call in on the phone.
Okay, you please let me know if I do cut out then.
Yep.
Okay. So, Madam Chair and Commission, thanks for having us again. We will go through a short presentation tonight. It's very similar to what you all saw a couple of weeks ago, but we wanted to make sure that maybe any new folks in the audience tonight essentially saw the same thing. Now that you've had some time to, I think, begin looking at the draft plan, we thought we would just walk through this in about 15 minutes. If you guys have any questions, certainly I know you're going to open it up to the public. We're happy to take any input. So we appreciate the opportunity again tonight. Next slide. So again, we're in February. This is an opportunity for us to present to you this evening and also next Wednesday, the 11th. So we are getting near the end of the land use drafting process with the Planning Commission, and then subsequent to that, our understanding is it then goes to the council. You can go to the next slide. Just as a background for everybody, certainly MLUPA requires that you update your growth policy. The land use element is, of course, a component of that policy. It addresses everything from the various land uses, whether residential, whether commercial, industrial, et cetera, how they relate to each other, and recommends a path for the next 20 years pursuant to MLUPA. Next slide. You guys have been with us much of the way with regard to the engagement. We started in September with both in-person and online sessions. That moved into November and December in-person and online sessions. And back in January, just a couple of weeks ago, we held an in-person event with about 50 attendees and an online version of that as well. Listed about 65 online visitors. We can go to the next slide. So as we move through this process, some of the themes that we have really heard from community engagement is this desire for walkable, compact development in the right locations, preservation of existing neighborhoods, preservation of their character, as well as the community identity, the importance of housing affordability and workforce housing in the future, and certainly paying close attention to the infrastructure, transportation, and environmental limits to ensure that growth is generally directed inward as much as it can be. General themes from the engagement have led to the draft plan that you guys have before you. That plan, you can go to the next one, Alan. We'll give you an overview, a quick outline of that plan. If you go to the next slide, you guys have seen this before, but this is the Department of Commerce population projections. Generally speaking, the estimate is about 3,000 to 5,000 people by 2045. So operating under that recommendation or that demographic estimate, our plan should accommodate for that over the next 20 years. If you go to the next slide, you can see that with that with that population growth, the estimate is approximately 2,100 new housing units will be needed by 2045. It's important to note that approximately 3/4 would be for households earning less than 120% of area median income. So as we work through this plan, it was important for us to look at opportunities for density, to look at opportunities for housing and affordability incentives, and to look at opportunities to utilize and or expand the Legacy Homes program. That is outlined in our plan, and we'll get to some of those recommendations in just a second. But again, from this slide, 2,100 units is generally what we are aiming to accommodate. What a land use plan can and cannot do. It can guide development. It can promote environmental and economic sustainability, enhance the quality of life, contribute to opportunities for land to be dedicated for amenities, minimize land use conflicts by way of development standards, buffering, putting the right uses adjacent to each other, and then certainly supporting the business community. It cannot control market forces. So for example, if an area in your community is currently zoned for commercial, it may or may not have commercial develop on it. That will be determined by the market. A land use plan cannot guarantee development. It cannot predict the future with 100% accuracy, which is why we always recommend that you look at your plan on an annual or a biannual basis. It can't enforce regulations. It lays out the framework for those regulations, which are subsequent to this, the zoning regulations. And of course, it cannot ensure community consensus, but I can assure you that we have endeavored to bring all ideas and parties together to the best of our ability based on community input for this plan. You can go to the next one. The goals, Focus growth inward, that was an important component that we heard from the community. Provide housing options and affordability, kind of that housing ladder. Preserve the character and quality of life that makes Whitefish so special. Ensure environmental stewardship and climate readiness. We incorporated components of the climate action plans recommendations. And then support a resilient local economy, allowing for businesses to grow, develop, and evolve. Go to the next one, Alan. So the framework that we've outlined for the plan has essentially three components. A place-based growth component, which essentially shapes the development around the existing character that has been developed over the course of the community's evolution. It also looks at character and function in terms of the place types that we've outlined in this plan, which I'll get to in a second, rather than just looking at uniform standards citywide. Protect and transition community boundaries, certainly identifying where development, where growth is desired, and where we want areas to be protected. And then the third component is, again, building upon that local character. It's so important for us to ensure that not only the plan, but the subsequent zoning code updates and the development standards that might be incorporated in that do reflect the character of the community and the areas that should be protected versus those that might see changing character, new areas, new neighborhoods. You can go to the next one, Alan. So the place types, you guys have seen these presented, I think, at the prior three community open houses. These essentially describe the intended character, form, and function of an area. Keep in mind, these are not zoning designations. A place type could have 2 or 3 zoning designations that live under it. And so these are really character descriptions, ways of defining a neighborhood, ways of defining a business district. If you go to the next slide, Alan, you will note that since we were there the last time, we actually took into account some of the public input that we had received with regard to the area right around downtown. We created a new downtown, a heritage downtown place type. So heritage downtown would be that area that is just kind of south of downtown to the river to accommodate for some of the smaller multifamily units that are in there. That makes heritage downtown a little bit different than the heritage urban neighborhood that generally lies to the east of the community or east of the downtown. So this one was added to capture that unique character in that area. Go to the next one, Alan. We showed you these last time. I won't go through these in detail, but we've got an outline for each of the place types that includes existing and aspirational conditions, the future state where it could go, as well as the typical defining features that include the land use, the land uses, the lots, the dimensional components associated with those lots, and buildings and heights. So all of the place types have those descriptors included with them in the plan. I think the next slide, Alan, is the same thing where we get into some of the more densely defined place types, and then you get into some of the commercial and areas outside of the community. So this is the future place type map. We do have this divided into a northern, a central, and a southern. If we need to go to those slides later on, if you had questions. But again, the place types map includes the place types that define the character of the area, both existing and aspirational. And it's worth reminding that those can include 2 to 3 zoning districts that lie under them. You can go to the next one, Ellen. We did incorporate, we did take a look at the short-term rentals in the community. So you could see the map to the right includes a place type map with an overlay of the existing short-term rental allowances. And so most of the short-term rentals in the community, no surprise to you all, are up in the kind of the mountain neighborhood area, the downtown area, and a little bit of the suburban area to the west side of the downtown. Our recommendation is that we understand and think that it's important that the short-term rentals do cross over different place types because they may fit into a character, but they are defined by zoning as a use. Our recommendation is not to expand those zoning districts for short-term rentals at this time, but allow for what you have. They do cross over and fit into the character of the place types, but keeping that geographic footprint approximately where it is at the present time will certainly help to increase opportunities for full-time residents and maybe affordability. You can go to the next one, Alan. So then we incorporated approximately 10 recommendations as part of the land use element, a zoning ordinance update. Again, this would update the development standards and ensure that the zoning ordinance itself is in line with MLUPA. A recommendation to update the zoning map to match the place types. So look at the place type recommendations in terms of character and then line up the zoning districts accordingly underneath. And then a third recommendation was to integrate the design and development standards into the zoning ordinance. So much of the design work that you all have done is certainly through the Architecture Review Committee. As MLUPA does not allow for that to continue in its current form, the recommendation is to bring the appropriate and desired design standards into the actual zoning ordinance so that it is in compliance with MLUPA. Refine the conditional use allowances by zoning district. So rather than eliminating maybe all conditional uses, we should look to streamline and clarify some conditional uses where needed. Where possible, reduce the overall number of conditional uses, convert those to permitted uses, and then ensure that the appropriate and objective development standards, development criteria are incorporated into the ordinance to address certainly negative impacts that could be associated with some conditional uses, but ultimately reduce that number and try to reserve them for very special cases. You can go to the next one. Protect the character and scale of downtown, which is so important to the community. So currently, the downtown is zoned WB3, which allows for 45 feet 3 stories. With the new MLUPA and Senate Bill 243, this will now allow 60-foot buildings in the downtown. Some recommendations to protect the character include maybe some form-based controls that include build-to lines, step backs, etc., that might help ensure that the future development pattern in the downtown is in scale with what's currently there. Maybe looking at redefining downtown into sub areas. There could be kind of a Main Street area for, say, Central Avenue. Maybe there's a different downtown designation for the rail district to ensure that those areas are protected in terms of scale and character. And then maybe look at use limitations. Maybe it's a maximum of 3 stories for short-term rental, which are defined as commercial developments, but maybe 60 feet for the multifamily full-time residents. So there might be some ways to work within LUPA, but also with MLUPA, but also protect your character and kind of carve out some areas of downtown that may not be 60 feet. You can go to the next one. Consider updating the district naming to clearly define the intensity of the commercial zoning district. So again, with MLUPA and Senate Bill 243, you're now required to allow multiple unit dwellings and mixed use development on a parcel that is located in a commercial zone. So our recommendation is to really look at this and maybe amend the zoning ordinance to allow the minimum required residential density that MLUPA is requiring of you, and then use incentives such as the Legacy Homes program to actually add additional density. That additional density could be in the form of workforce housing. It could be in the form of deed restricted affordable housing, et cetera. And really maybe look at the same thing in terms of the 60-foot requirement along the commercial corridor that is associated with, say, US 93, right? If it were designated maybe light commercial, there may be a way to avoid the 60-foot wall that otherwise would be allowed pursuant to MLUPA legislation. So just some different ways to start thinking about kind of nuanced approaches to zoning to protect the character that is so valuable to the community. You can go to the next one. Create character-based standards for the zoning districts that are contained within the heritage urban neighborhood place type. So this area, typically located to the east of downtown, has some of the oldest structures in the community, residential structures in the community. So they're very small lot sizes, kind of tightly compact development pattern is worth protecting. Some opportunities to do that may be looking at a reduction of the zoning allowed height from maybe 35 to 28 feet, maybe looking at limiting the building footprint expansion to a maximum of 120% so you don't get outsized buildings in an area that you are trying to protect, and then maybe looking at restricting lot increases, lot size increases, and consolidation so that you don't get very large lots that would have very large buildings in areas that you don't want them. Opportunities, again, to protect community character. One of the fundamental goals of the land use element is to grow inward, and so part of the public outreach was to look at large lot areas over 10 acres and to start to think about, could those be developed in a different way, and if so, how? And so as we reached out to the community, we had identified some areas. These are the 3 areas that emerged as the top recommendations for absorbing growth. You could see Lot A up at the top. The recommendation up there was for compact suburban neighborhood place type. The recommendation for B, the bottom left, was for mixed neighborhood. More than 50% of the participants recommended mixed neighborhood there. And then C, which is currently zoned WB2, so it's already zoned for some commercial development, but that area, the mall and north of it, was recommended as a neighborhood center. So these were the 3 that emerged from the community outreach. These are 3 areas that they make up about 115 acres and could accommodate, depending how they're built out with density, could accommodate as many as 5,000 to 8,000 people. And so there's a significant amount of growth that can be absorbed within the community and start to create additional housing typologies within the existing community boundary. If you go to the next one, and again, our recommendation is to prioritize development within the existing boundaries, but there is a recognition that if those properties don't develop and or if they are exhausted, growth exceeds them, that there's an opportunity to start to look outside of the city's boundary. So our community input also included an opportunity for the public to choose areas outside of the community that they thought should be prioritized for annexation once we've looked at the internal growth opportunities, lots A, B, and C on the prior slide. And so what you see here are the areas D through M, and you can see D, E, J, K, and L emerged as the top 5 areas that the community recommended growing into if you were to prioritize annexation. These areas received more than 50% support. The areas that are kind of faded out a little bit did not receive nearly as much support, but they're illustrated on the map to let you know what other areas were presented for community input. But again, grow inward first, then look at annexations. I think this is the final one, and that is to simply collaborate closely with the neighboring jurisdictions. Certainly Flathead County, Kalispell, Columbia Falls, stronger region makes for stronger individual communities and stronger individual neighborhoods. And so working closely with your with your fellow communities and their politicians, as well as their planners, as well as their nonprofit groups, will lead to a region overall, and also allow for you all to maintain individual character, kind of define where those boundaries are between you and your neighbors, to ensure that your community character is preserved, as well as ensure growth that generally focuses inward. And if you go to the next one. Yeah, so when we were there last month, we also asked the public for their general input on the recommendations. And so here you can see it was a spectrum from disagree, mostly disagree, up to mostly agree. So what you see on the right side are the agrees to mostly agrees. So generally you can see the online version as well as the in-person numbers. You could see that generally people were very supportive of most of the recommendations. The two that might be a little bit of an outlier are the second one down, protect the character and scale of downtown. The in-person event, I think there was some confusion with the way the board read. I think that there was some confusion that it may have read that we, the consultants, were recommending 60-foot buildings in the downtown, and some people, I think, voted against it for that reason. It was actually MLUPA is allowing 60 feet in the downtown. And then, of course, we recommended some zoning tools that may help to protect some of the character and maybe bring down the scale. So I think there may have been a misunderstanding there. And then the other one that didn't receive quite as much support was the fifth one down, integrate design and development standards into the zoning ordinance. And that may have also been a bit of a misunderstanding. I think maybe some folks thought we should keep the architecture review committee, but MLUPA does not allow that to be an architecture review committee populated by folks outside of City Hall. And so that could have been a misunderstanding, or people were not supportive of the design and development standards. It was a little bit hard for us to know the nuances, but those were the two that maybe didn't get as much support. But generally, overall, pretty good support for the recommendations. Next steps. So this is our first meeting with you after presenting the draft plan. So we will be back in front of you next Wednesday at 6 p.m., February 11th. I think that is it.
Thank you, Thomas. We, at this point, since you will be back on the 11th with us, we can take a couple of questions from the commissioners here, if you have time. And then I'd like to allow the public to pose questions to you during public comment that you can either answer in general later, or you can answer as we come back on the 11th. I don't want to have a back and forth with public with you guys, but I would like for those questions to be posed during public comment. And then we'll receive the answers as you can give them. Some things may take some research, and we recognize that. So even the board, we will try to send our questions to you in writing over the next week so we can prepare for discussion. But right now, if there's anything from the commission that you'd like answered from the consultants at this point, we can ask quickly before we go to public comment. Yes,
We have the
Bill.
CGB email address for Thomas or whomever.
We can get that. I don't
Send it to
know.
Alan.
Sure.
Yeah, we can send things to Alan
Okay.
and he can send them to Thomas. And then likewise, anything from the public that is sent in to Alan, he can also send to Thomas. And then we'll wait on those answers as they can get them back to us.
And I've been sharing public comment, all the public comment that you have in your folders. I've linked them so they can see that.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything from the board for the commission? Sorry, go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I had a question. So when you're talking about the design and development standards that would then be integrated into the zoning, Were there specific ones you were thinking of? I know it's my understanding that the architectural review was applied to like multifamily or things that aren't single family homes and then also commercial. Was it gonna be like directed at both or one or the other? Just trying to get a sense of like which things would be.
No, that's a
Yeah.
great question. So I think that the MLUPA is pretty definitive in terms of, certain things relative to architectural design, colors, materials are not allowed to be incorporated as design guidelines or standards. And so the recommendation would probably focus on built form, placement, landscaping, those kinds of things that would carry over. Our recommendation would be that it would be for where you can do it for multifamily, commercial, et cetera. That you do it for both. Think about transitions, buffers, those kinds of things that could carry over. I neglected to point out that my colleagues Matt Engel and Lauren Holm are also on this call, and so Matt always has a lot of very good design ideas. He may have more to say with regard to me on this, but I think it was really relative to kind of that development pattern, built form, et cetera, that we would recommend get those into the development standards.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Scott,
Thomas,
go
the only
ahead.
thing I'd clarify on that is that typically they would be geared towards multifamily commercial development that is not single family or single unit development.
Right.
Thank you. We have one more question from Commissioner.
So, under this presentation, are short-term rentals considered a commercial or a residential use or something else?
So as far as a short-term rental fits into the place map, the place typology, we would consider them essentially, they feel and generally act like a residential development if they're in a residential structure or in a residential neighborhood. But as you know, if they're in the downtown, they probably feel and act a lot more like a hotel. I think, and Dave and or Alan can correct me, but generally as a use, they're viewed as a commercial use.
That's correct.
So the difference between place type and use, which was the older kind of, could you explain that just a little
It's
bit?
a new way of thinking.
Yeah, so the place type is just the character-based stuff, more or less, like how it looks, how it feels, and it's not specific to uses. That will come when the zoning gets implemented. So if you look at a place type and it says like, mixed, it doesn't mean that the zoning is gonna necessarily allow that. It just means that the place type, that's the kind of buildings and structures and development character that's expected in that area. And Thomas can elaborate more on that.
It's like they're taking a snapshot of like the appropriate type of built environment in that area. And then memorializing that snapshot and saying, this is the kind of place this should be in this area. And then the zoning.
It's a form-based approach, basically.
How it's built and how it exists. I don't know if I can do that better than you did, Thomas.
No, you guys covered it. I would say that under the place types, you could see a zoning designation that does allow for short-term rentals. You guys currently have those allowances right now, and that could be located adjacent to, say, a residential neighborhood. Part of the residential neighborhood, it may look and feel like a residential neighborhood, but if you've already got the allowance for short-term rentals, you would have to define that zoning, keep that zoning line there. It may look the same, but it'll act differently from a function and a use perspective.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll just add, Thomas, I know somebody has already mentioned it, but it's worth mentioning again, is that don't look at the place types as it's a 1-for-1 with a zoning district, because you may have more than one zoning district that covers one place type. You could have several zoning districts, so the character might be very similar, but because of uses and things like that, you might end up with a different zoning district.
Designation.
So we won't know that until we get into the zoning update.
Scott, go ahead.
What happens to prior non-conforming uses under this whole process?
What happens to prior non-conforming uses?
under the current code?
Yeah,
They
so,
just all come in?
so if you have if you have current existing non-conforming uses, they are certainly allowed pursuant to your existing zoning ordinance. If the new zoning ordinance updates create some non-conforming uses, they will be allowed to continue. There will be language incorporated into the code that allows for, minimal expansion, those kinds of things. But otherwise, a new use, similar use, that's not an allowed use in the updated zone would not be allowed. I don't think that you would see many uses currently going to existing non-conforming uses with the recommended place typology and the likely zoning ordinances, zoning designations that would fall under them. I don't think you'll see that. But if you did, they would be protected, they would be able to carry on, and there would be language to allow for their continuation and limited expansion.
The current code, state law requires that.
Right. Did M-Loop address that somehow, didn't they? I thought there was. Okay, all right. One final question, if I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
During our last presentation, there was some suggestion that maybe a light commercial characterization could be added. I didn't notice that in here. Was there what was the thought process there?
No, that's still included. It's still recommended in the land use plan. It's something that would have to be explored for, say, maybe the WB2 along 93, et cetera. That's recommendation still exists.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for the presentation and for answering our questions. It is up to you if you'd like to stick with us through public comment. And then in the end, if there's anything you'd like to touch on, or if you'd like to carry it over and let us know next week, that's fine as well, because we'll receive public comment tonight. And then likely, due to the interest of time, we'll start our discussion and actually give direction on the 11th. So I'm happy you'll be here with us then, but there will be a short period after public comment is over tonight. If there's anything that you guys feel needs to be addressed, there may be things that are confusing to the public that, if you're still here, could be answered. So we'll check back in with you if you're still around at the end.
That works. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. So at this point, we'll open public comment for land use. And what we'd like to hear from all of you, because we're only doing public comment tonight, I'd like to give leeway to let us know what you think, share your thoughts and feelings, because likely next week we will just have discussion and vote. And that to be said, we'll also accept anything in writing over the next week. So you can still submit public comment, but that just means that since last time we met on February 7th, we had a public comment portion, and then now we're having another one. So in the interest of time, we'll have public comment tonight and then continue to accept things in writing to Alan. And then next meeting, we'll go forward with discussion. So public comment will end tonight. So we'll give you guys leeway to go ahead and address what you'd like tonight, and then that'll be it for land use. So stand up, state your name, and let us know your thoughts on this land use presentation. Yes, thank you. Please, yes, and project towards the owl. Yes, thank you.
Talk to the owl.
Yes.
Okay, so you may know that I was an engineer in the city for about 30 years.
Okay, can you
I
say
rounded
your
up.
name?
Karin Hilding,
Thank you, Karin.
and that was a lot of fun working for the city.
Yes.
So I was lucky to get this review, I think on Monday, and I've gone through it. I had some medical issues the last couple of months, but I'm fine. But that was one reason why I didn't get to it sooner. What I'm planning to do is get this in writing to Alan and make it a little easier. and probably in the next couple of days, because I had a lot of comments. Most of them have to do with, I know we'd like to keep the historic districts and preserve the old buildings, but we've done a lousy job of it the last 30 years that I've been here. And I don't see anything concrete that's going to change that. I just don't think it's strong enough language. I think we need to figure out a way to do that. We had a meeting. I think Alan was there and Rhonda was there, and it was an expert from Missoula on historic preservation, and she had some ideas of things we could do. But we never, at least I didn't really follow up with her very much after that. What I saw in the railway district is I would review the plans of so many historic railway homes that were torn down, and then there was condos up above and commercial down below. There's nothing to stop that to continue happening that I can see in the railway district. I think in 20 years, it'll all be condos. And when our kids were little and Marty babysat for them, we were at 219 Dakota Avenue, a beautiful old railroad house, just a beautiful home, about 100 years old. And I would hate to see that torn down, but again, I don't know if I see anything that totally prevents that from happening. But we were careful when we sold that house. We sold it to a family that was going to live there. There's most of the people we knew in the neighborhood. There were railroad workers, painters. Dave Fern and Heather Fern were fabulous. But they're just a great neighborhood, and you don't want to lose that neighborhood feeling. But that happens when people just rent and don't stay that long. It's harder to have that feeling. So I had, besides historic preservation, I have a few other ideas relate to city standards. I worked on the engineering standards. Craig over there. And I'd like the standards to really reflect this language a little more. And so it will involve, I think, some updates to the standards. But lucky for me, I won't be there to have to work on that. I did it 3 times, so over 30 years. One thing I was going to point out that I noticed is in talking about grocery stores or neighborhood grocery stores, when we lived on Dakota Avenue, I remember seeing pictures of like 100 years ago, there was a neighborhood grocery store over there. So that's something to keep in mind. There used to be, and there was the pizza place, but there was the grocery store. I think it was on Dakota and Edgewood, somewhere in that area. But I think it's good to kind of remember the history when you're trying to plan for the future. So otherwise, I think I'll get this all typed up in writing in red for Alan. I think Alan's and the team's done a great job overall. I think it's wonderful. But you know, it's difficult to stop money from owning this town. It's just really hard to stop it. So it's not an easy task. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Next public comment. John, go ahead.
John Hibberling, 42 Crane Marsh Way, Whitefish, board member of Citizens for Better Flathead. I looked at the future use map and I blew it up and took photos so I could read the street name. And I see a lot of red, which is the downtown area, and a dark red, and then a lot of lighter shades of red all the way down 93. So that's a very large commercial area. And the text doesn't tell us how much of an increase in commercial designation there is over existing. I think we should have a copy of the existing land use map in colors to compare. Also, I'd like to see the number of acres of increase in commercial designation that's proposed here. I don't have memorized the zoning map, so I can't just look at it and understand or even figure out how much more new commercial we're getting. So I'm concerned about that. And look, what doesn't say we have to zone for 2045 right now. It could be done in stages. And I think the answer to shifting areas to commercial is to do it in stages, maybe every 5 years when the plan's reconsidered anyway. Add more commercial as necessary. And I'm suggesting that areas to be commercial in 2045, for now, be left in a placeholder like neighborhood center or mixed neighborhoods, before they're designated as full-on heavy commercial. And that brings up the high rises. They are allowed in heavy commercial, but that hasn't been defined yet. It's such an important issue. I think it's got to be defined in the land use section. Seems to me this corridor designation plus downtown, those are clearly in it. Mixed use neighborhoods seem to allow up to 50% commercial. It's supposed to be primary residential, so that'd be 50%, and maybe 49 could be commercial. So that gets to be pretty heavy commercial. We have to know where all these high rises might go. So let's see, and on the high rises, we need something in the growth plan which says no more than 60 feet. Doesn't say that yet, but certainly we don't want anything like in 70 or 80 feet. So it should say that. And I think it should say and be very clear, because the zoning regulations have to be done in accordance with the growth plan, that buildings should be 35 feet or no more than 35 feet tall everywhere else except downtown, heavy commercial and industrial. Maybe it's a limit of 42 feet. I don't know. I saw that in a couple of places, but a limit for everywhere else so that we don't have the possibility of high rises elsewhere. Then they're in the heritage downtown area, which is essentially the avenue. In the land use description, there's an allowance for general services. Well, that's probably commercial, but there's no definition for it. We don't know what that's going to include. So that would have to be defined in the land use plan, or perhaps just eliminate it because it is so vague. And let's see, what else should I read? The shoulds. I noticed in the goals and objectives, they're using the word should over and over and over again. While the zoning regulations have to be done in accordance with the growth plan, so that I think the growth plan should be clear, and we should use must or will instead of should in so many instances. And then my final comment is maybe this needs to be done as yet. The neighborhood center place type description doesn't include features, land uses, lots, and buildings, which are the categories for descriptions in all the other place types. And maybe that's just an omission that can be completed because it doesn't give us, for example, any information on what the building height maximum might be in the neighborhood center designation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yes. Step forward and say your name. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mark Volker. I live at 128 North Park, Millennium, me and my wife Kathleen. I have to apologize to the board. I was out of the country for most of the last fall and didn't keep up on all of this stuff. And so I'm pleading a little ignorance. So if I say something that's already been covered, please accept my apology there. One thing that I'm really disturbed about is mixed use. Seems like a new designation that is a free-for-all and is not setting well with me. I live in the Park Knoll neighborhood, and I noticed on the slides that one of the large areas was designated mixed use, as well as one to the north, north of the city dump, is how I have to put it. I don't know how those were determined to be mixed use properties, or how I should say, good for mixed use properties, and it's a question I should have asked the consultant there. But it appears to me they just took vacant land and said, hey, this is this many acres. We're going to use that as mixed use. Well, you can use that for everything. you know, and I agree with John here on a lot of his comments, and asking the questions. It seems that, the consultants, have just see this vacant piece of land on a map and say, oh, okay, we'll just designate that as a mixed use without character to the land or the neighborhoods around it. I particularly know the land south of the Parkville neighborhood, the Great Northern Heights, is not really, the topography of that land is not really conducive to what I read anyway in the short time of mixed use designation, not barring zoning like we were talking. I find it interesting too that that particular parcel of land is owned by one person, and so I kind of wonder if there's something going on that say, oh yeah, we'll give this developer a mixed use designation to make it easy to change zoning. That's the feeling I'm getting, and that's the feeling my wife got today, and I wanted me to relay that. Other than that, right now, since this is our only public comment, I will have to probably put the rest of my comments in writing because I've not been around and there's a lot of people that talk here, but I also wanted to say I agree with Citizens for Better Flathead and what they just stated as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Further public comment on land use?
Sorry, I'm a little congested, so I apologize for the gravel in my voice, but my name is Katie Sullivan Lyons, and I also live in Parkville. Public speaking is terrifying for me, so bear with me. I kind of want to piggyback on my neighbor. I came here today to specifically talk about the topography and the geology of option B. It is not clear, because I participated in all of the surveys, how exactly those parcels were selected, because the description of mixed use tells me that you clearly, not you personally, but whoever did that, clearly doesn't understand the topography of that part of the west side of Highway 93. So that parcel particularly, you can only see a very small fraction of the part that butts up against where you've already zoned commercial. And it's a very steep slope. You can see it if you were to drive up my road. It is a very steep slope. It is heavily wooded with mature trees. And when it tops out on the ridge, the trees continue on part of it and it does open up. However, there is a downslope which empties into a wet meadow. And for those of you that are not familiar with what a wet meadow is, it is a water wetland ecosystem that is characterized by saturated or waterlogged soil for much of the growing season. There are areas of high groundwater, mostly grassy and low shrub vegetation, that provide crucial habitats for birds, insects, and a variety of mammals. Excuse me. I've lived on the corner of that property for 8 years and have been able to observe the wildlife in that area. And it is a wildlife corridor for a host of animals. Most importantly, the deer moving from the Whitefish River to the Stillwater River. We have animals that live in that wetland year-round. Migratory birds that come and nest there, including sandhill cranes. And it is a self-sustaining resource for them. The reason you don't hear about conflicts in our neck of the woods is because they have so many resources in that one spot that they don't have to seek outside alternative resources in our yards and our homes. The coyotes eat the deer. They don't come into our spaces and eat chickens, and well, probably the chickens in the farms behind us, which is my next point, is that is a largely rural area. And up until 2018, we technically had a rural designation. Great Northern Heights wasn't even constructed until 2017. And so prior to that, we had a couple of churches, an old funeral home, and that was about it on that side. And then the construction of the hotels and various, smaller businesses march towards the downtown core, as I assume you designed it. However, beyond Don K, it's a largely rural area, and when you go over that ridge, that's all there is back there. And those people on Caro are not gonna tolerate over 4,000 trips on a 2-lane narrow road. And potential flooding risk in their properties. Now, the wetland is protected, the stream bed is protected by a special designation. It only covers about 100-foot boundary around the wetland. I sent in a very long letter, and I apologize for that. That did include pictures, so you can actually see some of the areas outside of that boundary that are filled with water for 4 to 5 months out of the year. And it does go down, but it comes back anytime it rains heavily. It comes in the spring, it comes in the fall. So there's water in it right now. So it comes multiple times a year. So to develop on it, a developer would have to get special permitting. They would have to do wetland mitigation, special erosion controls, because once you start ripping out the trees and the grassland on the downslopes, because it's bowl shaped, it has a downslope from Caro Road into the wetland also. You're talking about a lot of money and a lot of specialized processes in order to even protect the homes potentially in that site, much less any designation for the wildlife that rely on it as a corridor and a resource. Kind of brings me to the alternatives, like in every survey I filled out, like I understand that you want to grow inward. We don't have a lot of square footage inward, and where we do have square footage is an infrastructure and all of the amenities that people are talking about already in place is around the hospital. So my suggestion would be ideally to eliminate option B as a targeted area. But if we're not willing to do that, if we're not willing to follow the guidelines set out in Senate Bill 382 about protecting wildlife corridors, wetlands, water quality, all of those really important things, then can we at least apply a placeholder, which is supposed to, not a placeholder, but a place type that is supposed to dictate how you apply zoning to that area that more closely aligns with the rural character of my neighborhood, which is technically, if you read through your descriptions of placeholders or place types, we are more closely aligned with a mountain neighborhood. Even Great Northern Heights, they have slightly smaller lots than us on the backside. But even they talk about the rural character of their neighborhood. And beyond that, you have Cheryl's farm. Cheryl owns the bookstore in town. And all the farms on the other side of Caro. Had those people prioritized wanting to live close to town where they could walk to shops and coffee shops and the grocery store, I highly doubt that they would have invested in the financial investment of purchasing land that far out of town. And we have available areas around the hospital and closer into town that already have existing infrastructure. Every single one of those condos and townhomes and everything that's along the walking trail already have access to all of that. They don't have to walk 93. We can already do that, by the way. We don't need more commercial behind, even more robust commercial designation. We can already walk down the hill and walk to a coffee shop, walk to 2 grocery stores, walk to the dentist. There's all kinds of places that we can walk. We don't have great infrastructure as far as dedicated bike lanes, and we have buckling sidewalks and things like that on our end. The landscaping isn't all that attractive or being the welcoming mat to Whitefish, which is consistently voted like one of the most charming small towns in America. And that's, you're welcome, Matt. So what I would really hope is that we are not getting caught up in what seems to be this race to apply high density everywhere. This bill only mandated that, as far as the timeline goes, that you had 3 years to write a growth plan that was comprehensive, inclusive, and protected the character of your community while still providing housing needs long-term, over a 20-year period. If we need 2,000 units of housing, we don't have to complete that in 1 year. And we have 700 units already in the pipeline. Every unit counts. Every single unit counts. So whether it's one house that gets put up where there were no houses before, or we're converting units like the downtown that gets converted to a apartment complex, like we're adding units. We don't have to do this all in high density neighborhoods. Like, and honestly, as a family of 4, we're kind of worn out and feel left out of the conversation. We do need options for people that work year round in Whitefish. A lot of those, as we know, are employed at the hospital. Again, another reason we should be maybe focusing some of our alternative areas rather than rural farmland where people have invested in being in that setting to something that already is available to us and is closer to one of our largest employers that not only employs doctors, but travel nurses, custodians, like all those people would probably love to be able to walk to work, let alone drive. They would probably love to have something other than the hospital cafeteria.
So Katie, you're at 10 minutes.
10
now.
minutes? I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
And I know I said
No.
I was gonna give a lot of leeway, but that's gonna
No,
probably be our cutoff tonight,
That
so.
felt really fast, so I
Yeah, no, you're good.
appreciate cutting.
And we have your written comment too,
Yeah.
with the pictures and everything,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Yeah, and just, my final statement is,
No.
let's make sure we're doing it right.
Thank you. All right, next, go ahead.
Hi, Kurt Schramm. I live at 339 West 4th Street here in Whitefish. And I also have 541 Spokane Avenue and 560 Spokane Avenue. And I just want to talk about that 2-block segment, the 400 and 500 block of Spokane Avenue, and how it's lumped in the WR4 zone, which is fairly low density. I think it allows like a duplex on a standard lot. Or it allows mainly office space. If you look at the 400 and 500 block of Spokane Avenue, it looks like it's kind of frozen in time. And it hasn't been a very desirable place for people to live on because of the traffic. Those old houses literally will shake when big trucks drive by. It's loud. In the summertime, you can't get in there because of the traffic. And then freestanding office space, which is also allowed, just isn't really in demand anymore. That's why we're seeing, well, the uses over there are becoming less and less desirable in that 2-block segment. I know Thomas mentioned making light industrial in the, I think, what was it, WB4? Is that right? I'd love it if you guys looked at doing some sort of light commercial in that 2-block segment, 400 and 500 block of Spokane Avenue. I'm not saying high density. I'd love to see high density for affordable housing. But I know people love the aesthetic of that area. Granted, some of those houses look like they're about to fall over. And that is, quite frankly, the doormat, the front door to downtown. Virtually every visitor drives down Spokane Avenue. And before I came here, I walked the 400 and 500 block, and there were no less than, I think there were 5 beer bottles in the front yards and just trash strewn about. the houses are getting rough on that street, because it doesn't make sense to tear them down and put up a duplex. Nobody wants to live there. You're not gonna achieve that return, and you can't rent it to an office. When I try to rent those units, I'd say 95% of the phone calls are food or retail. I mean, insurance companies are kind of going away. There's not a lot of use for freestanding office space. So anyhow, I'd love it if you guys took that into consideration, and love the garden wall in, beautiful. But 400 and 500 block, take a walk up and down those streets and see what you think. So thanks. That's it.
Thank you, Kurt. All right, further public comment tonight? Anybody?
I've got a presentation, so I wanted to be respectful.
Go ahead and come on. Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind if I stand on that side, because I've got a cold, my voice is going, so I may only get halfway through this.
Sure,
So-
yeah.
And Alan's been kind enough to queue it up on his computer, so I don't know if you can, but we didn't have enough money to print out all of these, so I've got a handout. It's available as part of the testimony for the community, and so with that,
you have three.
it's called handout.
So we're doing a full presentation.
Well,
I'm gonna go through it quickly like a fire hose.
tell us your name and.
This one I opened is
Where do you start?
upside down.
So it's, you can flip it over.
We can turn our heads.
Hey, but you.
This is why you don't rely on technology. So ignore the presentation on the wall, but I will have this presentation, and all the council people, the commissioners have that as well. My name's Donna Rambula. I've been hired to represent the heart of Whitefish. So full disclosure, I'm getting paid. So I do have a client, and I'm getting a small stipend to do this. So for your knowledge, my firm is Rambula. And we developed the downtown business district master plan in 2005 and did an update on that plan in 2015. So commissioners, I'm on page 2 if you want to follow. Along with that, we've also done additional work. In fact, we were hired by the city to work with the architect for this building, and it's a pleasure to be in it, because I think it's a good example of the success of the downtown master plan. We worked on Central Avenue and the streetscape, and we also were influential on designing the underpass under the viaduct. So while we may not know everything, and we're not residents of this, we have a history of 23 years in this community, and it's near and dear to our hearts. I think that there's a bit of lack of memory, if you will, of what the community was like before the master plan. And part of the planning that your staff and the consultants are going through today is an important piece of the work to shape your future. So before 2004, you were going in the wrong direction in terms of the downtown. I'm on the next page on 3. And the result of that has been a healthy downtown that you have today. I would like to think that your community plan will have the same results. So one of the key pieces that I think we want to give to you is some fundamentals about retail. We do retail strategies for the communities around the country. Next page, everybody who's got a handout. And what we tell the communities is retail is the hardest thing to get right. It's science. It is not an art. So any sort of magical thinking that we can just plop retail anywhere, it doesn't work that way. I work for small grocers. I work for national chains. I have an understanding of what that makes. So you can take that with a grain of salt, but there is. So there's some fundamental requirements that are universal for either a downtown or a neighborhood in terms of area for development. I won't go into those as part of the handout. Next page. And one of the key pieces of this is to understand what retail is. Retail is 3 things: the sale of merchandise, eating and drinking establishments, and personal services such as like hair salons. And so it isn't a bank, It isn't a use that doesn't have 18 hours activity. Think about that. So the other thing to think about is that retail is an evolving kind of use. The trend is to build less retail than what we have today. And if you go to the next page, the result of that change in trend is that the spending power of people is changing because there are things that weren't occurring when we did the downtown master plan, for example. People now are shopping online. That didn't occur 15 years ago. So that influences what we can do in terms of retail. So it also informs what the land uses are, for example, in the 93 corridor, where you've got tire development, and those are turning into likely housing scenarios. The next thing you need to understand is the type of retail. There's two types. One is we call it transactional, where people buy goods and services based mostly on the things that they need on a daily or weekly basis, like your Safeway or your drugstores. And then the key consideration is a selection of goods, a broad selection of goods and services. Like if I'm looking for a light bulb, I want to have 3 or 4 of those, and I want to pay a low price. So that's a key consideration. Next page, please. The second part of this is what we call experiential retail. And I think this is really the fundamental component of discussing the downtown, the neighborhoods, because this is what we all want. This is where the retail environment, actually doing window shopping, sitting outside at a cafe, is as important as the purchase. It's often called third places in planning lingo. And here you're doing the right thing as fostering local and regional retailers. So when we look at those uses, that transactional shopping is where most people spend their money. The smallest portion is this experiential piece, which is about 12% of the overall pie. Next page, please. And when you look at this pie chart is people looking for experiential retail are not going to siphon any of that spending away from big box and mall because it's price conscious and selection wise. And that experience is going to be slicing the pie smaller and smaller between the downtown and neighborhoods. And frankly, somebody's going to be fighting for the crumbs. So we want to make sure that we really address the fundamental needs of downtown. So go to the next page. So when we talk to retailers and people who are going to be tenants in retail buildings, there's 2 things that you need to keep in mind. Retail is driven by one, population, and the second is drive-by traffic. So there are some markers, because we've been doing this for 30 to 40 years. If you want a downtown, you need 8,000 housing units, not residents, but housing units to support your downtown. A neighborhood center, because I built neighborhood centers and downtowns. You need 2,000 minimum residents to support 20,000 square feet. That's one block of retail. Somebody say, oh, we're just talking about a shop. That's not a center. That is an anomaly. And if I'm a retailer, I need to be next to like uses. So that means it's a minimum of 1 block. So as we look at the projections in the vision of Whitefish, in 2045, we're projecting 7,776 units. That falls short of that target. And so you're not going to be able to see downtown retail alone to be supported by population alone. Apologize for my voice is going out a little bit here. Go to the next page, please. The second piece of this is drive-by traffic. There's a what I call a Goldilocks zone. You need to have the right amount of traffic, not too little or not too much, because if it gets too busy, nobody wants to sit out on a cafe on a very busy street where cars are loud. There's a lot of dust and congestion. So combined, cities that are small like Whitefish need both population and drive-by traffic. Next page, please. So the other question is, where are people coming to shop in Whitefish? And the reality, people are not shopping here just solely from Whitefish. You've got what's called a trade area. And I cooked this up. I haven't done, I'm not of the market analysis, but typically this is what they would look at. They'd look at a primary trade area, which is about a 20-minute drive, a secondary a service area, which goes beyond Kalispell, which is 25 minutes. Those are the people who are shopping in downtown Whitefish today on the 93. So it's a considerable area. So if I want to have specialty goods, I want to open a women's apparel shop, I want to open a shoe shop, that even gets to a larger service area. When I'm looking at drive-by traffic, it's not a coincidence that your retail is along your busy streets because they get the drive-by visibility that offers to you. So there's a diagram here that shows low traffic and high traffic. You want to hit the sweet spot, the Goldilocks zone of about 8,000 trips a day. Next page. I'll keep going through this. Now I want to apologize to Alan and staff for appropriating their logo. This was not approved by them, and I want to bow and beg your forgiveness on that, and I won't do it again. And so what we've done is identify some issues and concerns. So first of all, we think, and I think we need to have some convincing from the staff that this isn't true. Typically, when we do a regional plan, we use typologies, type places, and we see what's called polycentric design, where you have neighborhood centers. But this is typically a big city approach. When we look at a neighborhood, best practices identified by informed groups like the American Planning Association say you need at least a community of 400,000 to do a center-based approach. And if you have a sub-district or sub-neighborhood, typically that's 25,000 people. This community is essentially a neighborhood. And I trust that you have a consultant can demonstrate where this approach is appropriate. And I would only ask them to show us case studies that they have implemented, designed and built that are equivalent to Whitefish that have these sort of approaches. And we're not talking places like Park City that have a trade area that's an hour away from Salt Lake City, but some places isolated as your community that is far away from major metropolitan areas, and give us some schemes. So I know I will finish this up really quickly.
Yeah, because that's 10 minutes. That's 11.
Yeah. So I'm going to skip ahead. And so if you would go to our recommendations, requested actions, and this is on page 19 of your handout. So what we would suggest is that you focus your growth policy first and foremost where people want to be in Whitefish, the downtown. And what we suggest that there should be a number for the number of housing units within a mile radius of the downtown. We want to suggest that your transportation studies and your policies reflect your Connect Whitefish bike plan and build by 2025 bike infrastructure to connect your outlying neighborhoods within that mile radius, which is a 5-minute walk, bike ride, and a 5-minute quarter-mile radius to the heart of the downtown. So it's in the diagram. So that's the piece that we want to see. The second piece of this is we'd like to remove locations A and B, and I know there's a little bit of difference between your diagrams and the text where we've seen the word mixed use, change that to mixed income, take out retail away from A and B, and change C to community corridor place type. And there's some more diagrams, and the rationale for this is because we do believe that the 93 corridor, where you have WB, for those areas, can service those areas with walkable, accessible retail, because we do agree those neighborhoods need to have access in walking distance to services so they all don't have to go to the downtown. And we think you got policy in place already. So I'm done, and I think I'm over that. So thank you very much, and I appreciate you giving me that time.
Yes, further public comment. Thank you. Go ahead and state your name.
My name is Mary Beth Moran. I live at 604 Geddes Avenue, and I'm the executive director of Habitat for Humanity of Flathead Valley. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and the commission as you review the land plan and accompanying designations. I'm just gonna ask you to please look at larger parcels that can be dedicated for affordable housing, combined with market rate housing. Habitat for Humanity of Flathead Valley has been doing this responsibly with other cities, Kalispell and Columbia Falls, and we'd love to partner with Whitefish. She's right, it can't all be done at once. We would love to partner with Whitefish to build at least 10 houses a year for the next 10 years. But if we could partner with a private sector partner, and build a mixed income neighborhood, I think that could be a lot more than 10 houses a year. We are a responsible partner. We've been here since 1989. We've built 73 houses so far in the valley. The end of this year, that will be 83 houses. And so as you look at this land use plan, I'm just going to ask you to, or continue to implore you to look at with the lens of how we can help Whitefish create more affordable housing over at least the next 10 years and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Any further public comment?
Yeah, Nathan Dugan, 1970 Kalispell Avenue. Just gonna touch on a couple of things here, quick, related to stuff that I saw in the land use chapter. Thomas mentioned it, it's come up a couple of times before, but the fact that 75% of our housing over the next 20 years is to address the 120% of area median income or less. And I think it's interesting. I was sitting in a housing committee meeting last week, and Daniel from Housing Whitefish and Chris from the Housing Authority were talking about how they can't fill their 80% rental units because the market, both in Kalispell and here for rental units, is kind of sitting at the same place for rent. And so I think that it's important to consider that some of that is being served by the market, especially in the rental market, and that doesn't all need to be a deed restricted thing. 75% deed restricted affordable is a literally impossible goal, so that's a good thing. Some other things that I want to touch on in the chapter, I want to touch on the word preserve that is in there just over and over and over again, and I think that that's like a very weird word to have in a document that is ostensibly planning for a changing future. I would, I guess, just follow that with saying that I hope that you consider replacing that with something like enhance our community character, because we are planning for what is ultimately a changing future in the rest of the document, and that word doesn't really jive. In some of those place types, there is the recommendation for 60 feet, and that has a qualifier of like 4 stories based on state law. I think the 4 stories thing is just flat out illegal. I think like if somebody wants to build 5 or 6 stories in 60 feet, the state law is for 60 feet. We have to let them do it. So I would consider maybe changing that. When it gets into some of the higher density areas and place types, it expresses a maximum of 18 units or something in one of them. And I would encourage that we like move that towards a units per acre designation. Because that's really meaningless. If you're at a 5-acre parcel, 18 units is not very much. Obviously it is on a third of an acre or something like that. And so putting that on a units per acre basis is a lot better way to go about it. I appreciated Mr. Arambula's presentation there, especially at the end, because it kind of touched on my last point. His partner published a book, so we bought it and kind of were looking through it. And I like to say that I agree with more things in here than I don't agree with, and I think that that's interesting. But I want to reiterate kind of the thing that he closed on, where he talked about Whitefish essentially being a neighborhood. And so that diagram that he showed you, those 1 mile radius, That's effectively, in my opinion, in reading this book here, that 1 mile radius is effectively this concept of an urban neighborhood. On that place type map, there's a whole lot of suburban designation within that 1 mile radius. And I think, I'll just read you the first line here. The creation of high density housing neighborhoods, more units per acre in the city center is an essential ingredient. And so I think that we should consider eliminating any of those suburban designations within that 1 mile radius if we really want the downtown to work. I think that is imperative for having a downtown that's successful in the future. It's interesting to hear that the population statistics. I'll just end with a brief joke. I hope that you guys can study someday how many residents are required to support tennis centers bars. Yeah.
We can have a discussion about that. Yeah.
Is that it? Are you?
So.
Are you done? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Great.
She's asking me.
Hello,
Thank you.
fellow scale. Thank you guys all for your time. Thanks for having us and thank you for the thorough review. I'm with the Park Knoll Group, with a 124 Park Knoll. Been there for about 5 or 6 years. My wife's originally from here. I'm from Missoula. Really, there's nothing that I can't say that our friends over here have said and our neighbors have said, and seems to be agreed that B designation is really kind of what's, striking with us. And one of our residents submitted a formal letter to you, and I just wanted to highlight some of those points, really addressing the compatibility of transition zones. I know that will come, but the environmental constraints and hazards, as Katie has mentioned, and really the infrastructure and service impacts. Park Knoll's been designated in the city for almost 20 years, and we still don't get our road plan. Right?
2018.
So, yeah. And so there's a lot of things that we're stuck in the middle in Park Knoll between the A and B lots. B is really, at least in our opinion, designated in this type as mixed use, should really be kind of brought down to at least suburban development. And we've had discussions with the developer, the fact that they're reaching out to us and we're not opposed to change. We're not opposed to the development. A lot of us have young families. We actually like, having some mixed use, playgrounds, travel ways. I mean, my 3-year-old was biking downtown this year on a bike, 2-wheeler, by the way. I'm golfing across, in the church parking lot with my kids. We're the ones that live in that area. And so just understanding that when Thomas said that there could be a potential for 8,000 people in that B area. Not in that B area. That's not what he said.
From all through.
2,000 units, was it? Oh, from all three. 2,000 units from all three. But understanding that from when we moved in, it used to take 2 minutes to take a left off of Highway 93. Now it takes almost 10 to 20 minutes. And I got kids that are going to be driving soon, so do Duffy's, so do a lot of our residents that are it's just a nightmare. And so just understanding how this fits in with the Highway 93 corridor plan is kind of like my main thing. Understanding the infrastructure to support this designation, and at least from what we've heard with the developer and folks that own that property, move it back to the suburban.
It should be noted that the current developer only has access that care of, so the bulk of the traffic, if he moves forward with development there, it's always to be filtered down a 2-lane rural road.
And we've offered up access to our road with help with light and all of this, not gonna fly. So there's some things, but appreciate you guys and all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
All right, further public comment on land use, Rhonda?
So I was gonna yield my time to Dawn, but since I didn't have that opportunity, and wasn't able to finish, I do want to bring up the change in the downtown urban neighborhood. In all of the boards and all of the public sessions which I attended, the neighborhood around downtown was all one type. Both the neighborhood east of downtown, south of downtown, and west of downtown. So I live in the Riverside Park neighborhood. And I own a business south of downtown. And those are some of the oldest and most charming and desirable and affordable places to live. And they have now been changed. The south and west of downtown little area has been changed to a different place type that was not on the boards, because I check them every time, to allow single unit, duplex, triplex, quadplex, small multi-unit up to 6 units per lot. This is a radical change from what's there. The only multifamily is the Manor at the end of 4th, which is really not part of our neighborhood. And so I can't understand the intent. It's up to 3 stories, 35 feet height. The homes in our neighborhood are 1 to 1.5 stories. They're very charming. They are affordable. They're small. They're on small lots. So it's a very dense neighborhood already. And there are a number of ADUs. I'm shocked. I think this was a bait and switch. And it makes me very unhappy that this came up at the last minute. This came out on Thursday. I think if my neighbors knew about this, they would be appalled. And I'm going to be sure that they do know. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. Further public comment on the land use element. Richard, go ahead.
Richard Gilder, Fifth Street here in Whitefish. Want to really strongly suggest that you may want to think about coming out with a statement to the effect that, for the time being at least, you do not support commercial development in residential neighborhoods. In addition, I believe there's a great deal of misunderstanding as to the definition of commercial and retail, especially when it's discussed in neighborhoods. And I think if you were to take that out, that could be one of those future configurations in a year or 2 or 3. So I just think that there's a definition problem there that I get confused with it, and I think other people get confused with what the intent is of commercial and retail in neighborhoods. Secondly, new developments, I think will probably or undoubtedly come with an HOA. And with that HOA comes the CC&Rs, the covenants, conditions, and regulations. Those CC&Rs may not be compatible with the new growth policy in that they also come with, usually, and I don't know the one that doesn't, a monthly HOA fee. And that HOA fee then is an addition to the cost of the housing, which is really a negative impact on affordability. So I caution you there. And almost finally, any discussion of reducing lot sizes, setbacks, density must consider the impact of those decisions on the spread of wildfire across the city, The planned community wildfire protection plan, the CWPP, should address these issues, but the community development plan must not foreclose on measures needed to protect Whitefish from wildfire. And finally, I agree with Rhonda that this idea of the heritage downtown is brand new to me, and I think it needs reconsideration.
Thank you, Richard. Further public comment on land use. All right, go ahead.
Hey, Keegan Stephen Holler, 306 Luther Avenue, speaking tonight as the Executive Director of Shelter WF. First thing I want to mention is just I think the board has to reevaluate the announcement that you won't accept public comment at next Wednesday's meeting. Alan's email said, and I'm quoting here, this land use chapter will be discussed during work sessions by the Planning Commission on February 4th and February 11th, beginning at 6 p.m. Public comment will be welcomed at both work sessions. So there were people I talked to that wanted to make public comment in person, and I told them they could come this week or come next week. Based on the latest info that the Planning Commission gave us, I think we need to stick by that. We set that precedent with the housing chapter. We said that in the email. I don't think we can change it with like the notice of at 6 p.m. today. The first comment I wanted to make just address the Arambula presentation. I already kind of talked about the process by which that presentation came to be. Shelter WF thinks that that's a big problem in terms of public participation under MLUPA. I won't get into that. But about the substance of it, I don't even really think this presentation qualifies as like a criticism of mixed use as an idea. What it is just a market analysis saying that retail isn't viable outside of downtown. I just don't really think that matters. There's two possible arguments here. The first is that neighborhood commercial is unprofitable and therefore it'll never happen. If it's not going to happen, there's no reason to lobby so hard to oppose something that's never going to take place. But also the conditions of a neighborhood can change. You know, the 2007 growth policy would have never thought about COVID and the effects that that brought. I don't think we want to eliminate a tool that businesses in the city has just because it might not make sense right now. I don't think that's sufficient justification. This leads us to the second argument, which is that neighborhood commercial is so profitable and useful that it'll increase the vacancy problems downtown, and that's why we're opposing it. In that case, I think it is just very capricious deciding which businesses get to exist where from a downtown business association. I don't think the city should prioritize some interests over others. What I do agree with is that they said, you know, something like 75% of the housing units should happen within downtown. That's great. And then they say that we can't have a heritage urban type that allows small multifamily downtown, therefore encouraging housing units within a mile of downtown. So I feel like that there is a coherent strategy for the city here. I just don't think it's necessarily one that's been presented that we should use that strategy over the one that the land use consultants developed. Second topic I wanted to bring up was that discussion around preserving community character that Nathan brought up. I agree that changing preserving to enhancing probably avoids a lot of the discussion that happened during the housing element that doubtless the planning commission is going to have discussion on again. I also wanted to bring up in the survey the three recommendations that were the lowest supported. We're protecting the character and scale of downtown, about a 50% support average, protecting design standards in the zoning ordinance, about 52%, and the overlay preserving the character of the avenues, which is around 56% support. So the most shaky suggestions, the most controversial ones, were around the concept of preservation. So preserving neighborhood character is controversial not just in this room, it's controversial in the community, and that's what the survey showed. Community character is really important. What Shelter WF disagrees with is the idea that the best way to have good neighborhood character is by saying no, and by this kind of narrow concept of preservation. I think that really limits what we can do and the better city we can build. Final comment I wanted to make was kind of addressing some of the comments here and online. There's a decent amount of comments from people next to larger lots opposing development, like those from Park Knoll Lane. I think that concern is entirely understandable, and I really understand their frustration. It's the same pattern with greenfield development that's created so much controversy in the past. We are picking a few places to absorb a significant amount of the growth.
On the level.
You know, these people are on the other side of our commitment to preserving neighborhood character in other parts of the city. We have decided that the backyards of neighborhoods next to those three lots are less important than the backyards of people who live on Lutford. Eliminating those suburban designations close to downtown would go a long way to helping that. I also care a lot about housing development. I recognize that there are some large lots that are useful to develop. And if there's a developer with a plan and they meet all the engineering, I do think there's some decent amount of high density and therefore affordable development you can get on larger lots. If that happens, that's tremendous. I think the city is pushing in a lot of its chips, few properties, and I don't think that that would be a very successful strategy. I'm going to quote from Daniel Sitter's written comment at the end here, which says that no neighborhood should experience rapid change and no neighborhood should be exempt from change. We are kind of doing the exact opposite in the land use plan right now. I really urge the planning commission to take a look at that. He also suggested allowing the next increment of development in every zone and adopting all the recommendations for land use and housing. I think that's very, very useful, and it's entirely compatible with enhancing community character. We're gonna have a more detailed written comment later in the week. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Keegan. Further public comment on land use? Chris, go ahead.
Christian from 504 Spokane Avenue. I think it's really important to clarify that what Thomas Edgington said about the survey boards at the open houses, that there was a broad, he felt, misunderstanding of some of those boards, specifically the board saying protect the character of downtown, because it stated that at the top, and then a couple paragraphs down said allow 60-foot buildings in downtown. Numerous people clarified that for him. I think it's important to take those boards a little bit with a grain of salt, because at both open houses, it was observed by numerous people that the response boards, the dot exercises, were flooded by certain groups of people attending, being directed where to put their dots and things. And Thomas recognized that during that open house. So I think it's important to look at the whole picture and the whole draft element, not specifically those open houses, because they didn't really represent it. And the numbers, when you look at it, the difference between, 50% and 46%, or 43 and 36 or something like that, that's negligible, not really even within the margin of error. So take that with a grain of salt and for what it's worth. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Further public comment tonight on land use element? Anybody online?
Anybody online want to comment? You can unmute your mic and give your comments.
Hi, Mike. Hi. We can see you. Well, we can't see you, but
Hi, everybody. I'm here.
thank you. All right. No public comment online. All
And
right.
Madam Chair, I would have come to the meeting. I actually got back into town in time, but my day started at 4 a.m. Ireland time.
Is this
And I'm
Mike
sick.
saying?
Yes, and I'm sick as a dog, so I'm not coming in.
Oh, whiskey, huh? Just kidding. We'll be thinking about you on your vacation and hope you enjoy it. And thanks for joining us from afar.
Drying your sickness.
Yeah, the best medicine. All right. So with that, seeing no more public comment in the audience, I think that everyone who's wanted to speak tonight, we've heard from. So I thank you guys all for submitting. Feel free to submit in writing again. Multiple ones of us have talked about the criticism of these meetings going so long. That's not something that we want or plan. We try to do the opposite. It's difficult. So tonight we accepted public comment, and it's well within our right to say that we will close public comment on this. If that seems harsh, I understand, but there's no agenda out for the next meeting yet, is there? There's just been an email stating what may or may not happen, which didn't come from the commission. It came from Vision Whitefish. So anyone who wants to submit public comment, unless Angie or Dana have a different view of what should happen. We've done it in the past.
I think if the notice went out, then we accept.
If the notice went out from Vision Whitefish. Okay.
It's provided to.
But if there's some new, okay.
Yeah, I think just for the sake of transparency, if that's what people were planning on. They should
Okay.
have the opportunity again. I think you said
Yeah.
some guardrails, please don't get up and say the same thing. I guess.
That's fine. Yes. So these meetings may go long, and we are attempting to curtail that, but if there is new public comment from someone on the 11th, we'll have a short period for that to happen, to accept that. But then we will begin with our commission discussion, and we'll review over the week. Alan is good about posting immediately public comment. I say immediately, but very quickly you get any written public comment. You and Michelle up for us. So we'll review that. And then at this point, if our consultants are still here and would like to do any short comments on things that you've heard or answer any questions, please go ahead with that now.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I think maybe what we'll do is we'll take the input that we've heard tonight and try to maybe craft a response so that we can address that at the next meeting. I think that may be the easiest in light of the time. I did want to make one comment though. I made a mistake when I noted the capacity for the build out in the 3 internal areas, A, B, C. I think I said up to 8,000 units. What I meant to say for the internal area, when we ran a scenario for kind of mixed neighborhood, it was approximately a population of 3,500 people, maybe 2,000 dwelling units. The other number was intended for the potential 700 acres of annexation area. If we just ran a simple scenario looking at kind of a compact suburban, that one could yield approximately maybe 5,000, 6,000 units and up to 8,000 to 11,000 people. That's what I meant to say. I inverted those numbers, and I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't as draconian as I had run the numbers. And again, those were pretty large numbers. So just a point of clarification. Sorry about that.
All right. Thank you, Thomas, and anyone else who's still with us from CZB. We appreciate your work and sticking with us through this meeting. And then we'll see you on the 11th and send questions to you between now and then as well via Alan. So.
Madam Chairman,
yes.
To the public and to Keegan, to the people that you talked to about not needing to come this evening, I really appreciate the position that you were in. I think your advice to them ought to be, though, to submit their comments in writing in some form or fashion so we can have those and consider them between now and when we have to have those discussions. I think it would well serve you and them so that we got that. It's just very difficult, as you know, to act on public comment without seeming. So anyway, I would highly encourage anybody that didn't come tonight, that wanted to come tonight, don't understand. If you can get those to us in writing, we'll get them considered much more timely now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Frank, for that. No, thank you. That's great. And all of the written comment is wonderful. Being here is great, but also in writing is wonderful. Like Mike is not in town. And that often happens that somebody needs to go back and review written comment. It's much easier for us. And you can clearly state what your comment is. So thank you for that. At this point, we will close this portion of public comment. If there's something that somebody really needs to say that's new next week, since we've been directed, we'll take that next week. And at this point, unless there's something else on the land use that we need to discuss at this point, we'll close public comment and then postpone the discussion until next week. All right. I don't think I have to, let's get a motion on postponing discussion to next week.
I move to postpone as the best option.
Okay.
I second that.
All right. All in favor? Thank you, guys.
Mike's raising his hand too.
Thank you, Mike. Oh, now we can really see you. Hello. Okay, so we'll now move on to general public comment. We, at the beginning of this kind of new phase of this commission, decided that we want to have maximum public comments. So that means if there's something at the end of the meeting that you still would like to say in general, go ahead and let us know now. This is typically pretty short, but it's nice for anybody who has something they forgot to say or just wants to add in general. So any general public comment, go ahead.
Yeah, makes sense. I'll encourage people to do.
Okay.
Probably perfectly fine with that. Maybe it'd be nice, like right now, to tell people, hey, public comment next week, a minute long or something, or like to give people a time limit that's fairly limited so they know they have to comply with that. I don't know if that would be helpful because I'm not trying to make this process longer for any of you. That wasn't my intention. Yeah.
Certainly, thank you, minutes at city council, and I really tried.
Thank you. No, we wanted tonight to be all encompassing. and try to get it all together. Next week, same thing, try to limit it, but if it's only new people that we have not heard from, that should be a time for them, if they're allowed to speak, to also have equal time to what people had tonight. So I don't want to limit, the time per person, just the people. Yes.
We know these are just, but just the optics of how the public comment periods played out during the housing. There were a bunch of young people here that first meeting. The public comment was held open. It seemed like to allow the opposite perspective to shine through a little bit. We come to this meeting and there's not very many young people here. Aranda was here with their presentation, and public comment is decided to be shut off before that next meeting. And so optically that looks like certain voices are trying to be elevated above others, and that's probably not what's happening, but that is what it looks like.
I can assure you that's not what's happening, but thank you for that comment to let us know how it appears to you, I suppose. So now we'll move on unless there's more public comment on this. Yes, go ahead, Don.
I appreciate that, and I would say that I'm representing a stakeholder, not a special interest group. And so they have the right to be heard, and I'm the representative, and they chose to do that. I would also request, because I agree, public comment is important. I haven't been at a meeting here. It's really hard to hear people. If there was ability to have a PA system, a microphone where people could talk to, and a podium, it would be much easier to, because I've heard wonderful comments, but I don't think everybody's hearing all of those. And so it's just as a matter of fact, if there's a way, I could get a mini microphone somewhere so that people can actually talk and I could hear their need and hear all the comments. I think we're all losing a little bit of that. And so that's just, as an outsider, my hope that it could be better, we have a better system.
Thank you. Karaoke machine? Is that
Kind of like in chambers there.
Yeah, in the chambers, we have the capacity to do that. So we'll take all of that, under advisement. I don't know who decided to move it over here, but it's here. We're here. So for now, yes.
I think the answer to that is typically work sessions, at least on the council level, are held here and not on the dais. There's no prerequisite or decision. If you want to put us up on the dais next meeting for purposes of making a microphone available, that's not a problem.
My question, I think for the reason we moved in here too, was so that people could participate online, because when we were in there, we didn't have anyone running the system, and so we couldn't have online comments. So I think that was kind of the reason we decided to move in here, is so people could participate.
It was
We would have to bring in Jake or somebody on his team to run the system in here and manage. We could not do it ourselves.
There are benefits to being in here for sure, as far as Dave being able to run this and being able to use Teams. But all of that will let higher ups mull over and decide if there's a way for us to have some sort of PA system for people to hear better, because we've gotten that feedback. And then also for the owl to pick up, that's important. Our minutes are not always present or incredibly thorough. They're, kind of bare bones now that we have them, which is wonderful. But the video is nice too with the audio. So we'll try to see. Yes, Michelle.
As the minute taker, can I also ask for sidebar conversations to be taken out in the lobby area? It is a little bit distracting.
Okay.
When I hear whispering in the background, and I'm trying to pay attention to everybody else.
For sure. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I think that's important, for multiple reasons. It's good for that, but also just have those before or after, because during it's difficult and you need to hear what your peers are saying. And we also want to hear. So if there's any further general public comment, we'll take that now. Otherwise, we'll close public comment. Yes, go ahead.
One question.
Yes.
You direct everything to Al for the public comment, and the questions for Susan.
Yes, so
I can, if you have questions, I can email them to me, I'll send them directly to them. They're looped into all the public comment, so I give them a link so they can see everything the planning commission has said.
Thank you. All right, so with that, we'll close the last general public comment. Matters from the commission, anything that you guys would like to bring up tonight, go ahead.
And I don't know if this is even possible, and I don't know that I even want to do what I'm about to ask. Is it possible for future meetings, obviously not next week, to start at like 5:30 or 5 so that, like, because we know we're gonna have some late nights coming up with like zoning and stuff like that. Is that even a possibility to consider? Or are we just extending the time that we're here? We do that.
I'm the wrong guy to ask, I'd do it at 4 if I could.
I know, can we come in at 5 in the morning?
This room, so you can use it at 5, you can start at 5:30. Our work sessions for council generally start at 5:30, gives those that are working time to get 5 p.m. to 5:30 here, but that extra half an hour does usually make the evening go just a little bit shorter. But you could start at 5 as well. It's just getting that communication out to the public so they know when. But
We also said 6 for the press releases and the public stuff on the site.
It was also because Toby was on the Lake Shore Committee. And
That's right.
Toby couldn't make a 5 o'clock meeting.
Yeah.
So we arranged it so Toby could make the meeting.
And I might be a little late if we do it at 5, just because I have to come from Kalispell from work, but I would be willing to come at 5. It meant we didn't have to necessarily
Just
do
make
Check the day out. 6 works better for me too. I would have to ask to leave work early, but
I think we're gonna run into members of the public who aren't off work yet and have planned.
I just wanted to kind of put it out there to see if we're both.
I think a lot of people would prefer to start earlier, but then since we have this precedent of 6, it concerns me. Yeah, at this point in the process, for next week, let's keep it at 6. And then if anything can happen post that, we can have a discussion so we have time to notice and go from there. Anything else from the commission?
I have a thing.
Yes.
I just wanted to say with Michelle and the note taking, I think that was, or taking of the minutes, I think that was a Citizens for Better Flathead suggestion, which kudos to them. I really like the suggestion. It's been really nice to read. And thank you, Michelle. Like, this is one more late night for you. So it's really appreciated. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, thank you.
We have staff. They're going back through all the videos and drafting minutes, so we will have.
Is that happening now?
All of the
Okay.
minutes at some point, probably not by your public hearing, but.
Okay.
But we will have them all drafted.
Can you tell them thank you too?
All these things that happen that we don't know. Thank you. All right. Anything else from commission tonight? Okay. Matters from staff. You guys have anything?
Everything specific.
All right.
Remember, you actually have your public hearings, February 19th and the 23rd or something. 23rd, yeah, Monday. That's right. Thank you for reminding me about that.
Are you gonna send out an email?
I wanted to make sure, I wanted to actually talk to the planning commission about that, just because we were trying out. Thank you. So we have to reschedule one of me, and I did talk to Whitney, but I didn't want to blindside, so that's why I wanted to bring it up first.
Okay, thank you.
So the final public hearings on this have been scheduled. The 19th is the first one. Now, we originally were gonna do it on the 25th, but that doesn't work for us to turn around in time to get it to the planning commission, to the council. So we're proposing a special meeting, which will be on the 23rd, which is a Monday. Just that time, again, because it doesn't otherwise give us enough time to turn this around in time to the city council. So I'm hoping that you commissioners are available for that. And what's gonna happen again is you're going to get a draft of everything that's completed, that's been red marked exactly the way that you've red marked it. And what we've added since you've seen it will be highlighted in yellow, because there's stuff we've had to add text. So you'll have everything exactly the way that you did it. So all 300 pages.
Enough. I'm just looking at a calendar now. We're talking February?
Yes, sir. February 23rd, because because the city council is having theirs on the March 2nd.
Correct.
So so there's a second meeting scheduled for the 23rd, so we can make sure if there's any changes, we can get it to you in time for the second.
Okay, so you're talking about this group meeting on the
The
19th.
regular
The
planning
meeting,
commission meeting, which has other things on the agenda, by the way, so.
it's gonna be a long night.
Yeah.
So the 19th and the 23rd.
And the
To be
8th?
clear, the 23rd is only if we need to continue the public hearing. You might, I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, you guys have done a lot of work throughout these work sessions. And so, that's the idea.
The placeholder.
It's a placeholder, so we're advertising that it can be continued to that date, so that it's out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be continued to that date, I have to read the advertisement, I believe that's how you read it, but it says it may continue to the 23rd, not that it will.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the 11th, the 19th, and the 23rd. Yes,
Not the
Do
8th.
you want me to send you guys a confirmation email?
please.
Yes.
Yes,
We
absolutely.
love emails from you, Alan. So fun.
Wow.
Was it the 6 o'clock on the 23rd?
We didn't, not any message.
Yeah.
My uncle's in town.
Bring him.
Yeah. You get to see you in all your glory.
He's in the town council for Charleston, South Carolina. You have a
Okay.
compare and contrast.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, so, we've just talked about our upcoming meetings. And I think that is it for us. Thank you all, members of the public, for coming. And we hope to see you at the next meeting as well. Thank you, guys.
You move to adjourn.
Thank you. Second. All right. Thank you all.
Kyle.